Today's daf is daf Tzadik Aleph. We're holding Tzadik Aleph on the base, 10 lines from the top. Okay, so now in connection with the ruling of the Braisa that the Beis Din has to assess whether the Misa, the death, can be attributed directly to the action of the person who hit or caused it. So the Gemara asks, Ish Eimel Nizakin or Einid Nizakin? So the question was raised before the Chachamim. Is there an evaluation performed with regard to damage as well? In other words, to determine whether the act, does Beis Din have to determine whether the act was sufficient to inflict the damage? Or is there no evaluation performed with regard to damage? In other words, we're saying before that if somebody hit somebody in a way that he killed him, so now he gets certain or damages. He gets certain, he has to pay certain things. So the question is, is there an evaluation with regards to damage? It's basically have to evaluate if the thing that he hit him could cause this or not. What's the question? Do we say that do we say in a case of killing is where we perform an evaluation, and so the assessment is determined whether in Neshama a soul departs with this, and now the guy will be held chayiv. Whether a soul, so me again, so do we say that we determine whether the guy died or not? But in the case of damage, perhaps we say that he's chayiv whatever the damage he caused. Perhaps there's no difference between the two. With regards to damage as well, the Beis Din evaluates whether the act was sufficient to inflict the damage or is not, and therefore he will be exempt. So now the Gemara says, Tashma, come in and bring your proof from what we learned in the Mishnah and Daf Nun. The Mishnah and Daf Nun Beis said, concerning the halachas of a bed, of a pit, ma'bor, just as a pit, the pit has to have sufficient depth to cause death when falling into it, and asar tvachim, it has to be at least 10 tvachim deep. So too, any other excavations that have sufficient depth to cause death has to be afka again. So so too, anything that has death, asar tvachim has to be 10 tvachim, which means the hayab chusam asar tvachim, that if any of the excavations were less than 10 tvachim deep, and now an ox or a donkey fell into them and died, so potter would be potter. So who's a boy? But if it was injured in it, but he did not die, so the chayr would be chayiv. So that's what the Mishnah says. So again, by a bird, it says it has to be, if it's a bird, sheesh b'kedei lahamis, so asar tvachim, so too everything kedei lahamis has to be asar tvachim. But if it would be less, and a sure one he'd be potter. But if it got damaged, but if it was injured, he'd be chayiv. So now the Gemara says, "My lab mi mata lamala kachashiv." But the chayre, what's the case of the Mishnah? It's counting the tvachim from below to above. So you have to look from below to above. And this is what the chayre of the Mishnah is saying: mitevach v'ad asara, from 1 tefach deep until 10 tvachim deep. Misaleka nizakin ika. There's no liability of death, but there's liability of damage. Almal and nizakin kodu. So the chayre we see that with regards to damage, he's chayiv for whatever caused the damage, even a fall into an excavation having the depth of 1 tefach. So we learn from here, from the Mishnah, that the Beis Din does not perform an evaluation with regard to the damage, right? Because we're saying we're saying the Pashtus is chayiv even without making an evaluation. So the Gemara says more rejects this and says no. Like, this is not the pshat of the Mishnah. The Mishnah is counting from above to below. And this is what the Mishnah is saying. Asara, if the excavation is 10 tvachim deep, so misika, then there's liability of death. Pachas ma'asara purta, if the excavation is slightly less than 10 tvachim, so there's zaken isa, there is liability of damage, but misaleka, there's no liability of death. And in actuality, and actually I could say to you that there is an evaluation performed for damage. In each and every circumstance is called ki heiche de mitaske baba inan, we require that there be conditions whereby the injured party could reasonably be damaged, whatever caused the damage. So now the Gemara says, Tashma, suggest another proof. If a owner of a slave struck his Eved Kanani on his eye and blinded him, Eved Yetzer ben Chedus. So again, I skip. If he struck the Eved Kanani on his eye and blinded him, or his ear and made him deaf, Eved Yetzer ben Chedus. So now the Eved will go free. But Keneged Einai, if he struck it near his eye, and as a result he does not see, Keneged Oznai, or near his ear, and he cannot hear, so then the Eved will not go free. So if he hit him directly on it, and he can't hear now, so then he goes to Chedus. But if it's, let's say, Keneged Einai, but not his eyes, and now he can't see, or Keneged Oznai, and Eved, that's what the Tosefta says. Now, my time, so what's the reason that the slave is not free? Is it not due to the fact that we require evaluation of the damage? And in such a case, the assumption is that the owner's action did not suffice to cause the injury. So what do I see from this brayso? I can learn that there is an evaluation performed with regards to damage. So the Gemara rejects and says, look, that's not the case. No. The slave is not free, because we say that it's possible that it was the slave, like Mishum Davar Minan, because we say, Hu the Ab Ace Nafshe. The slave, it was the slave who frightened himself. That's what made him blind or deaf. It was not the actual strike that caused it. The Tanya, like we learned in Brisa. What does the Brisa say? This is a Tosefta. Exactly. Hamavis is Chaverei, one who frightens another and thereby causes him injury. So then, he's potter. Why? If one shot into another ear and made him deaf, potter, he is exempt from Dini Adam. But if he held him and shouted into his ear and made him deaf, then it's chayiv. It's chayiv according to human laws as well. Why? Because he physically took hold of him. So what do we see from here? I see a case that he made himself frightened. So, he made, what's it called? Right. A grama. Okay. Right. So there's a grama and garmi. Okay. Tashman. So now come and bring another proof. Say, with regard to the 5 types of damage that one who injures another person has to pay, so the Beis Din evaluates the victim as to the value of the damage that he suffered. So, and the guy has to give him immediately, and payment for medical costs and loss of livelihood is evaluated. So he is evaluated from the moment of injury until he is healed. If the Beis Din evaluated that a certain sum would be needed to pay for his medical costs and loss of livelihood, and the victim's condition began progressively deteriorating, they give him the payment only as they had evaluated him. Rice continues, if they evaluated him as requiring a certain sum for medical cost and loss of livelihood, so again, if they evaluated him as requiring a certain sum for medical cost and losses, parnasa, and he healed sooner than expected, so what's the din? They nevertheless give him the entire sum as they evaluated him. What do we see from here? We learn from here that there's an evaluation performed with regards to damage. So the Gemara says, Lemeimad Gavra, with regards to evaluating an injured man, Kama Likter Miha Maka Kama Leimikter. So, now this. With regards to evaluating an injured man to determine how long he will suffer from this injury and how long he will not suffer, so this is not a question. With the Vadam Dinam, for sure we evaluate, what happened. We raise the question whether the Beis Din performs an evaluation or not with regards to evaluating an item. In other words, determining if it's capable if it's capable of causing this damage, or it's not capable of causing this damage. So with regards to this issue, what's the halacha? So Tashma coming here approved from what was taught in Abraisa. Shimnatimni said, "Ma agree. We had this already yesterday. I agree from Yuchid. Just as the fist is unique, that it is submitted to the assembly of judges, assess its ability to inquire as to the witness who attests that it was the first used to strike. So too, the ruling can be issued in the case of any item that is submitted to the assembly of judges to identify its ability to inquire, and to the witness who attests that was the item that used to strike. So Shvamino, Yishayim in the Nizok. And now we can bring up Raya from our question that there is an evaluation with regards to damage. Shvamino. Okay, now Amar Mar Amdu B'Hibri Nason Lay Kol Ma Shamdu. If they evaluated him as requiring a certain sum for medical costs and lost his livelihood, so Nason Lay Kol Ma Shamdu. Nevertheless, if the Beis Din evaluated him as requiring a certain sum for medical costs and loss of livelihood, and he healed sooner than expected, they nevertheless give him the entire sum as they had evaluated him. Say the Rabba, this supports the opinion of Rava. Rava says, Haiman Damdul Kuliyema. With regards to this man whom they evaluated, including that he would not be able to perform malacha for the entire day. So, with regard to this man who they evaluated, in other words, they concluded that he would not be able to perform labor for the entire day. And his wounds healed at midday, and he's performing malacha. So the halacha is that, evidently, we give him compensation for the entire day. The injury was one that would generally cause a man to not be able to perform labor for the entire day. Now, the injury was one that would generally cause a man to not be able to perform malacha for the entire day, and it was the Shamayim that had compassion on him and healed him sooner. This does not affect the liability of one who caused the damage. Now, the Mishnah taught, if a person spat at him, and his spittle reached him, or if he removed another's cloak, he has to give him, the Mishnah said he has to give the injured party 400 dinars. Amar Papa Rapana says, they taught us halacha only in the case where the spittle reached him. But if the spittle landed on his clothing without touching him, he's not required to pay him. So the Gemara asks, let it be like one who humiliated another with words. We see that if a person humiliated another with words, he's putter from paying anything, although he'd be held chayim n'shamayim. The Mishnah teaches with regards to the assessment of payment for baishis, it is all assessed in accordance with the honor of the one who was humiliated. They asked should they raise the shadow before the Chachamim, Tanakama l'kula kamar or l'chuma kamar? Does the Tanakama, the first Tana in the Mishnah, say his opinion as a leniency, or does he say his opinion as a stringency? The kula kamar, the Gemara explains the two possibilities. He says his opinion as a leniency, teaching that there is a poor person who does not need to take so much payment for humiliation as detailed in the fixed sums in the Mishnah. Or perhaps he says his opinion as a stringency, teaching that there's a rich person whom the person needs to give him more than the fixed sums. So he says, come and bring a raya, with the Kamar, Rabbi Akiva, Filanim should be sold, and in Kilo in Bnei Chin, Shirdim Nechsem, Shemne Avram, Yitzhak Yankiv. Rabbi Akiva said, we had this yesterday, they are viewed as though that they were freemen who lost their property and became poor, and their humiliation is calculated according to the status as they were the sons of Avram, Yitzhak Yankiv, which are all prominent yichus. So Shmamino, Tanakam L'Kul Kamar, so it must be that Tanakam are being makel. So where says Shmamino? Now, the Mishnah says, there was an incident occurring involving one who uncovered the head of a woman in the marketplace. And what happened? The woman came before Rabbi Akiva to request that he assess payment for the baishis, for the humiliation that she suffered. And Rabbi Akiva obligated this guy to give her 400 dinars. The man said to Rabbi Akiva, said, my teacher, give me time to pay the penalty. And Rabbi Akiva gave him time. I know the whole story that he tried to trick her, and Rabbi Akiva said, you still have to pay for it. So the Gemara asks, and he says, but the question is, how could Rabbi Akiva give time for compensation? Doesn't Rabbi Chanina say the base does not give one time to provide payment for injuries, and he must pay compensation immediately? The Gemara says, when we do not give him time, when we do not give him time to pay compensation specifically with regards to injury, as he caused a monetary loss by physically giving him physical damage to the victim, but with regards to humiliation, where we did not cause him a monetary loss, we do give him time to pay compensation. The Mishnah teaches, the man waited for her until she was standing at the opening of the courtyard and caused her to uncover her own head. Rabbi Akiva says that although she caused injury to herself, which is not permitted, this does not negate the man's requirement to pay her compensation. The Gemara asked, Vatanya, but we learned that Rabbi Akiva, that Rabbi Akiva said to him, you plunged into mighty waters, and you raised nothing more than worthless earthenware in your hand. Since it's permitted for a person to injure himself. This contradicts the Mishnah's account on Rabbi Akiva's opinion. So Rabbi says, no, leikash is not a question. Here in the Mishnah, where it states that one may not injure himself, it's stated with regards to inflicting actual physical injury. And kameh beishus, while there in the Brisa, where it states that it's permitted for one to injure himself, it's stated with regards to causing humiliation to oneself. But the ruling of Rabbi Akiva is in the Mishnah stated with regards to causing beishus, humiliation. Uktani, and we learned in it teaches us, with regards to one who injures himself, although it's not permitted him to do so, he is nevertheless pater from any sort of penalty. This is mashma that the isser is in effect even with regards, even without beishus. The Gemara says, no, this is what it means. Let me buy beishus. Needless to say that beishus that a person can go and embarrass himself, even by damaging, hurting oneself, which we know the din is there. A person is not allowed to humiliate himself. But a person, other people who damages chayavim, they are going to be chayiv. The Gemara discusses whether it's permitted to injure himself. Is a person not permitted to injure himself? One might have thought that if one takes a shua to do evil to himself and then not do evil, that he will be pater from bringing an offering for having transgressed his oath. That's what the pasuk says. The pasuk says to do evil or to do good. Just as taking an oath to do good, which one is chayiv, is referring to an optional activity, as opposed to taking an oath to perform a mitzvah. So too, taking an oath to do evil is referring to an optional activity, as opposed to taking an oath to transgress. So therefore, I can therefore learn out, conclude within the category of one who is chayiv, if he transgresses oath, the person who takes an oath to do evil to himself and to not do evil. It's clear from the Brisa that doing evil to oneself is mutter. Shmuel says the psak of the Brisa is not referring to one who takes an oath to injure himself, but is stating with regard to one who takes an oath, saying be'eshav kindness. I will sit in observance of a fast, which is permitted to do so. Now, earlier in the same Brisa, it states that one who takes an oath to do evil to do others is not chayav for violating his oath if he does not do evil, as is also is permitted to do evil to others. Now, if the Brisa is referring to one who takes an oath to fast, then the kavosi gabe haras acherim. So then, it's the same context of doing evil to others. The Brisa must also be referring to the case of lashiv and metainis, that the guy is sitting in tainis. So the Gemara says, can one compel others to sit in observance of a fast? The Gemara says, yes, it's possible. As preventing others from accessing food or can impose a fast on them, the mahadig le bin drenya, where you can find them in a room. The Gemara questions, but we learn what is considered taking an oath to do evil to others. It's concerning a person who takes an oath stating, I will strike so-and-so, I will injure his brain. Accordingly, in this corresponding situation of doing evil to oneself, it's necessary to explain that the Brisa is referring to causing injury as himself, as mashra, this is permitted remains. Rather, it's a machlekes tanaim. Are you permitted to injure yourself or not? So who's the Tana who says that it's not permitted to injure himself? If you're going to say that it's from the brayso who says, "And surely your blood of your souls, I require." And Rabbi Elazar says, "From the hands of your soul yourself, will I require your blood?" Meaning that one is chayiv even for taking his own life. That is not correct. Maybe perhaps killing is different. While Rabbi Elazar holds that it's also to kill oneself, you're not allowed to commit suicide. It cannot be mashma from here that he holds that one is chayav for injuring himself. Rather, it's the opinion of the Tanya. The Tanya we learned in a brayso. It says that one is allowed to rend garments in anguish over one who died, but it's not, and it's not considered. It's not considered like the ways of the Ameri. But a Yiddish custom. Rabbi Elazar says, I heard that one who rips his garment excessively over one who died is given malchus for having transgressed the issue of do not destroy. So the Gemara says, and a kol sheken for his own body. Gemara says, so the Gemara says, no. Perhaps garments is different. In that tearing them is a loss that it's irreversible. Rabbi Yechanan would refer to his garments, he would say, as my honor. He calls begadim mechabdusai. Rabbi Chizda kad have misagi beni izmi v'higi medalu l'mani amar zamala rucha v'za'ini mala rucha. Chizda would, when he would walk among thorns and shrubs, would raise his clothing, despite the fact that his skin would get scratched by the thorns. And he said that this flesh will heal, but the garments will not heal. So perhaps it's also to rend one's garments, but it's permitted to injure himself. Ela Tana, rather, it's like the Tana says, the Tanya, what does the pasuk mean by saying, and he shall atone for him for sinning of the soul? With what soul did this person sin by becoming an uzzer? Rather, he afflicted himself from abstaining from wine, which is considered a sin. This person, this nazir, he only was mitzayir himself from wine. Nevertheless, the Torah calls him a sinner. Much more so, a person who afflicts himself by abstaining from everything through fasting and other acts, all the more so he's described as a sinner. So Rabbi Elazar Kappa holds that one may not harm himself in any manner. The Mishnah teaches one who cuts down his own saplings, although it's not permitted to do so, it's exempt from payment. He says, if one charged another. Yeah, Rabbi, he said like this. Rabbi Marachana taught the following brayso. If one charged another, you killed my ox, so you cut my saplings, and you were chayav to pay for them, and the other says, you told me to kill the ox, you told me to cut down the saplings. Potter is potter. Amar lei, Rav says to him, if so, you let no creature exist. Kol kimine, is it in his power to ascertain that because the other instructed him to cause damage, he's potter? Anyone who causes damage can say, you told me to do so. So Amar lei, Rav was said to Rav, Amar lei, es miyaya, shall I erase the braysos from the braysos that I teach? No. Interpret the braysos stated with regards to an ox that is ready to be killed, and with regards to a tree that is ready to be cut. Such a case, there's a reason to believe that he was, in fact, instructed to cut it down. If so, that the owner of the ox or the tree acknowledges that it be killed or cut down in any event, it might cut time late. What claim is he stating as there's no loss resulting from the action of the other? The Gemara answers, he tells them, I know, but you know the mitzvah. The case is where he said to him, I desire to perform this mitzvah, removing a danger or destroying I would desire for myself, and therefore I am demanding payment from you for having prevented me from doing so. The Tanya was taught, the shafach v'chisa, says he shall pour out and he shall cover. Mishavach, this teaches that one who poured the blood, the one who shechted it, Yichasa shall cover the blood. Now there's a mice involving one who shechted an animal. And now another went ahead and covered the blood. Made him chayav to give 10 golden coins to the one who shechted the animal as he prevented him from performing the mitzvah. Amar Rav. Okay, we'll stop here. Amar Rav.